Welcome to the Performance Banker Podcast. You'll hear banking industry experts providing unique insights and expertise to help bankers achieve higher performance, obtain outstanding results, and gain a competitive advantage. Here's your host, Tanya Gossage.
Hello, and welcome to the Performance Banker Podcast. I have Rob Horan, Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer of a financial institution with me today. Rob is another very successful banker who has spent a lot of his career in the banking sector. Rob, welcome.
Well, thank you, Tanya. Thank you. It's
Rob,
good to join you today.
Yeah, thank you. It's so exciting to have individuals like you on the podcast who have spent a lot of time in banking. And it's always a pleasure to interview, again, people like you. Let's go ahead. I'd like for you to tell us how you got into banking.
Well, for the most part, it was a long accident. I would say I actually started out in banking. I got my undergraduate degree in banking and finance and managerial finance, and I took a job out of college with a local bank to where I graduated, which was in Mississippi. And so, which I think they have just now merged with Cadence. It was Bank of Mississippi at the time, which turned into Bank War South, which I think is Cadence now. But I did my initial work with them when I got out of school, and I went through the management trainee program. I had a blast. I loved it. I got to work in all different areas of the bank. And then I got placed in my hometown. They had some branch offices in my hometown, and I think part of the plan was, to get the hometown boy back home to work with the folks in the community, since I knew them and things like that. And while I absolutely enjoyed it, I loved being a lender. I loved learning from the local president, or all the different things with doing lending and things like that. I had a couple of instances where there were people that, and this is just, I guess that the struggle for me was working with people in the community that absolutely needed money, and they needed financial help, and they needed the support. And while the credit that they did not have, or their credit was bad, or they didn't have a credit history, I knew, since I was from the community, I knew them, that they would do everything in their power to make sure that they paid it back. But I still couldn't make loans to them based on credit policy and rules and things like that. And to me, that was really frustrating. And so I guess, so what I decided was, I don't want to do this. And that's tough. And that's what I really struggled with more than anything. But I look at it as a positive, because I decided, well, what am I going to do now? So I went back to graduate school, and I got a degree. I got my graduate degree. And when I got out from there, I worked with a startup firm that was in the credit card space. And I'm dating myself when I tell you this. It was AT&T Universal Card. So this was back when there were calling cards and credit cards, and they decided to combine them together. And I had an absolute blast. Now, I was more on I was part of the finance team. So I was in the finance group, financial planning and analysis. I ended up joining the operations team, did all kinds of fun stuff, but eventually ended up having my leader on that finance team. He left the company when his boss was asked to go to First Union in North Carolina and start up a credit card company for them. And so he called me up and said, "Hey, you want to join the finance team?" And so I did all kinds of different stuff within First Union, and then, I went through about 87 different mergers, and
Wow.
then, yes, and yeah, I remember we counted them all. And so I know that it was in 2008 when I think just everything went crazy with financial markets. I left. You could kind of see the writing on the wall. They ended up merging with Wells Fargo. I took a job with a community bank. I've been in the community banking space, more from the operations technology side, and it's been a blast. I love working in the community banking space. So that's how I got into banking.
Wow, that's phenomenal. When you started talking about, starting out and doing those loans, it immediately took me back when I was a lender, and I was a lender for a very short time. And like you, gosh, Rob, it's so hard to, you want so hard to take care of the people that and you listen to the stories, you find out what their challenges are, what their needs are. They have families, they all have things that they have to take care of. And then when their credit's not good, or they don't score a certain credit score or whatever, man, and you have to turn them down. That was a very emotional roller coaster time. And it sounds like my experience was very similar to yours. And
oh, yes.
Yeah. So I have a huge respect for lenders today. They have a very tough job. A very tough job. And so, so when you talk about the calling cards and the credit cards, I remember those days as well. So that's wonderful. So did you then move from there? Probably not, but did you move from there directly to where you are today? Or tell us about your success from there to CIO. How did that success letter transaction take place?
So I think so. One of the really neat things I had the opportunity to do when I was with AT&T Universal Card was, like I said, I worked in the IT space. I worked in the operations space. Heck, I'll tell you, my first job, I mean, this is kind of crazy. You think about this, you've got your master's degree. You think, oh, you're going to get a job with, one of the big consulting firms, or you're going to go somewhere else. You're going to be making a couple $100,000 a year and stuff like that. I know it's all wishful thinking and things like that, but it's kind of humbling when you end up, I talked to a buddy of mine that lived in Jacksonville, Florida. He said, hey, AT&T's hiring. They've got this new startup. You probably want to come down and talk to them. So I did, and I went through just the general process, and I got selected, and they offered me a job, and that job was being a call center agent. I've got my master's degree. I'm a call center agent, and I'm working from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. Okay, that was my starting shift, and I'm making $17,500 a year. And, and that's kind of like really humbling to sit there and say, wow, I've got this graduate degree. I'm really doing well with it. But, one of the things that ended up working out, we were growing so quickly, and there were things that people needed. And I guess, I don't know, one of the things that I typically tell folks is, if people need help, find a way to help them. And, and I will tell you, just one of those things, my team leader at the time was trying to figure out, how can I take all the stats of all of y'all and put them in one place to see how we're doing? Well, shoot, in graduate school, I was using spreadsheets, and I had a computer and a spreadsheet at home. So I said, hey, give me that and let me see what I can do with it. And I brought him something the next day. He shared it with a buddy of his who said, oh my, this looks great. He said, who did this? And he came and talked to me. He said, do you mind if I share this with the finance team? Well, I had a job with the finance team in less than a week after that, because they found out I knew how to use spreadsheets. And so I just had a blast working in the finance team, and that helped me, because what we did was we worked with the leaders of the bank to understand what's driving all the costs in the business. Okay, so I got a chance to talk with the leaders of the business. I mean, the people running the place, because I had to support them financially, and I understood, when salary is 78% of your cost,
Mhm.
You know, it's like, okay, what helps you drive that up and down? When do you need to hire for these folks? How do you train them? You know, what are the other costs that are there? And so those were the things that helped me understand that. Well, I was so good at forecasting call volumes. I mean, we're opening up 1 million accounts a month, so you can imagine how
Wow.
crazy it was getting the accounts there. So I was pretty good. I was pretty good at forecasting call volumes, and I developed some models to help do that. So they was like, "Hey, we want you to come over here and do this and help run this department." So I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I, so to answer your question, I guess I got a lot of experience doing a lot of different things there. And then when my old boss from finance hired me at First Union in Charlotte, we were doing the same thing. We were starting up a credit card division. We were hiring like crazy. We were putting accounts on crazy. Just tons of accounts on a monthly basis. I can tell you that I went through sort of the same process there. I ran their NOC for a while, so their Network Operations Center. We had 19 different sites, so I managed all the telecommunications traffic for all those sites. I was responsible for all that. I had a MIS team. I had a development team. I ended up running the business call center for them for all the business clients, our commercial clients, our corporate clients, wealth management, private client. I had a lot of non-phone based teams. So I learned a lot about the business, and all of this, when I said I got to do all of these different things, these were different roles that I did over different times. And a lot of these were lateral moves. And so that's one thing I'll tell people is, whenever anybody asks you, hey, should I do this? I'll always draw 2 pictures, one of a pyramid, that is kind of like this, and one with a pyramid that's like that. And I know you get it, you're shaking your head because, the wider the base, it's much more stable than the one that is just straight up and down like that. And
Right.
so I tell people, I said, every opportunity you get, take lateral moves. Because like I told you, I got to run the call center that supported all of First Union Wachovia's business customers. Well, guess what? What helped get me there was the fact that I had experience and understanding of all these other pieces that were drivers for the volumes and the customers that were there. And that was one of the things that they told me when they hired me was, well, you've got experience in all this, so that's going to really help you be successful in this role. And so, yeah, that helped me get to where I am today. When I left, I took a role where I ran all of operations and all of technology in a small community bank. And so I got a lot of intimate knowledge in deposit operations and in loan operations. I had both of those roles. I had all the wires. I got to work with the Fed. I had all of technology. I'm working with core vendors. So I'm doing a lot of stuff there that's a lot more hands-on than some of the leadership roles I had at the big bank. But everything that I did there gave me the experience and the confidence that I needed in a community bank. Because, I've been through 87 different conversions, so I have done lots of stuff there. So when I got there, one of the first things I was doing, we were converting cores. And so, okay, that's a no-brainer. So it was real easy to be able to do that and go through that process. And then in doing that, it was kind of like, oh, wow, this guy knows a little bit, And so that helped me there. And unfortunately, in my first part of my career, I was always on the acquiring side. In the community banking space, I ended up being on the acquired side. So that was pretty humbling because I used to be the guy that did all the firing on the other side. Now this side, I was the one being fired because, hey, they already had my position.
Right.
And so it's like, so it gave me the opportunity to go through the recruiting process. One of the lessons I learned from one of my leaders, she always made me every year when it's time to do annual review, Rob, I want you to bring me an updated resume. And so I was in the habit of updating my resume annually, which came in real handy during that process.
Yes.
Yes. And so, and then being in the community space, the other thing that I did was I participated in the the local, this was in Georgia, so I was in Savannah, Georgia. And so I was an active member in the GBA, the Georgia Bankers Association. I helped lead there. I was the chair of the Operations and Technology Committee. So, I took opportunities to participate in those types of activities, which gave me a lot more exposure in that market and with others, so that when my bank did get bought, I had a lot of connections, and it was not long before I had another role. So, and actually, how I got into the role, I was in my last bank, I was chief technology officer, and when they got purchased, one of the gentlemen that served on the technology committee, operations and technology committee with the GBA, was with a big accounting firm out of Atlanta that also supported financial institutions. And the headhunter that was working with the bank I'm with today was using what was a friend of his, and said, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody that fits this kind of role." He called me up, said, "Hey, would you be interested in working in Arkansas?" I was like, "Sure, I grew up in Mississippi. That'd be fun." And I will tell you that it was just a good fit for both of us. They were looking for someone that had my skill set, and that was basically it. They were looking for somebody that had my skill set and the skills that I brought to the table, and it's been a pretty good match ever since. I think even if you were to ask other folks here, it has been a blast. It's one of the funnest jobs I've ever had. I love fixing things and building things.
That's wonderful. One of the things that you mentioned, and I'm so glad that you did, because I think it's so important for people to really understand today, people that want to become successful and even have the goal today to reach success within, a short period of time, or even 5 years, 10 years out. And what you said was so critically important, is how many lateral moves that you made throughout your career thus far. And I too made so many of those lateral moves. And while it seems frustrating at the time, when you look back today, that was such a critical point in the success ladder, if you will. And how many raises that I had that were 10 cents and a quarter, and all of the people that I've been talking to and coaching and interviewing for the podcast, the success journey has been the same for all of these individuals. And so again, it's so critical that people today that are at the younger age, that are wanting to move up through their journey, that's part of the process that they have to go through. It's not that they're going to get a $5, $10, and $20,000 increase with every move that they get. It is a process. And to have those lateral moves, to look back today and to get that skill set built in that next progression was critical. And I'm so glad that you brought that out. And so I'd like for you to share, whether you share both the most rewarding and or challenging piece of how you climbed that ladder. I would love to hear both, but share with us, as you went through this journey, I know there had to be both, but what was rewarding and what was challenging through climbing that ladder?
Well, for me, I always think there's a way to do something. I had this gentleman that worked for me once. He said, "Rob, nothing's impossible." He said, "Nothing's impossible with the appropriate amount of capital and support." It's just, whether you can have someone that has that much money and that much time to help you get there. A lot of times people, don't have that much money or time, but it. The most rewarding part for me is, like I said, I just like to do. I a long time ago, I was shopping for stereo speakers. Okay. And this was a long time ago when you had all those things that, you played them real loud and stuff. And I said to myself, I was like, I wonder if you can make these. Well, I read a book on it. I built my own speakers and I built a bunch of sets for other people. But those are the types of things that I guess I like to try different things and I like to do different things. And so for me, the most rewarding part was having the opportunity to ask questions and get answers. Hey, is this something I think I can do? Is this something I think I will like? And how does it fit with kind of where I am in my, I guess, my growth, in my, so for me, being able to do that now, on the flip side to your, 10 cent, 25 cent, increase. I mean, that the tough part was, knowing that, financially, I really wanted to be in a different place, but I've always told folks, and if I'm telling people this, I've got to live by it too, is, hey, you need to really find what makes your heart sing. What is that thing that is going to make you happy and enjoy what you do? Because I can tell you, I have taken roles that I hated, or I have been moved into roles that I just absolutely despised. And I despised the people that I worked with. And, for me, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, because there's nothing more frustrating and more demoralizing than being in that type of role. So when and if you get the opportunity, try to go for, hey, what fit you need to understand yourself. What are the things that you do well, and how can you make that be a gift, for the people that you're working for? How do you help them get better by using your skill set? So you really need to do that. Sometimes, some of it for me was just dumb luck. I just tripped into stuff and was good at it, and it worked out. Other times, I made a concerted as I got further along in that journey, as you're saying, I figured out the things that I was better at than the things that I was worse with. And so those were the types of roles that I sought out. And what I found was, the more you do that, not only the more you know, but the more confidence you get and the more exposure you get to decision makers in the business. And when decision makers in the business see people that are confident and are making good decisions based on facts and information and can prove it, those are the type of people that they want around them and supporting them as well. And that's what really opened some doors for me, was having that knowledge and that wherewithal and that base that we were just talking about earlier. Having done this in several different other places, it's kind of like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. I mean, because I could get in the weeds if I needed to. I didn't need to a lot of the times, and then there are a lot of them where I just knew enough where I was dangerous. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, I've been in roles that, hey, I've never been a developer, but I have led a team of developers. So I know what should be happening and what shouldn't be happening. Now, can I go write a lot of this code? There's some code I've written, but I can't do some of the magic that they do. But I know when I can call BS on somebody and something. And so when I say, I know enough to be dangerous in some things, that really helped me in my life too, is those sorts of things, knowing when to call BS and when not. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question there. I hope I'm just kind of going all over the place here. So
it's good stuff.
Yeah,
I love what you're saying. I love what you're saying.
I hope that's answering your question.
It is.
So that's really what's helped me get to where I was just being able to having the confidence. And then, right now I'm old enough in my career where if I was a younger man, I don't know if it would have worked then, but now I don't sugarcoat stuff. I say it like it is, because most people want transparency. Most people want you to be,
Mhm.
want you to tell them the truth. Is this good? Is this bad? And why? You need to be able to support the why. And as long as you can do that, and you can do that with facts, then that's a good thing. But I would never tell anybody come in and just call BS on something just because you're thinking BS. If you can't support it, someone's going to shoot you down and cut your knees off. And
Absolutely.
so you have to be able to support your position, but be transparent.
Mhm.
Be transparent, tell the truth. If it doesn't smell right and you know it, and you've got a reason, you need to tell people that.
Mhm.
Because the worst thing that can happen is someone can have a pet project and think it's going to be the greatest thing in the world, and you allow it to fail.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's the worst thing. I would much rather tell someone before we start something, this is going to fail and this is why. And if they say, no, we're going to make it work anyway, okay, at least you've done your piece in telling them. And you don't need to go back and say, see, I told you so.
Right.
And that's the other thing I would tell people. You don't need to do that. They already know that.
They
And
know.
they know, and they feel bad enough, and they will respect the hell out of you if
Mhm.
knowing that you aren't going to drag them down the road when they made a bad decision.
Mhm. Well, and if anything, support them.
Yep.
Support them because they feel bad enough.
Oh yeah, and don't remind them.
No.
Yeah.
No.
You don't need to. They already know.
Mm-mm. No. Hey, Rob, did you always want to be a banker?
No. No. Like I think like the story I told you earlier about starting out in banking and hating it. No, I didn't. I guess it was a lucky accident. I mean, I knew and understood banks. I sort of ended back up in the space, even though I was more on the operations and IT side of things. And I can tell you, having been a lender, it helps me. It's given me, even though that was ages ago. I mean,
Right.
the process to do a loan still hasn't changed. I
Right.
mean, someone needs money, you have to make sure they can pay the money back as a lender. You give them the money and you work them till they get everything paid off. And then you try to give them more money so we can make more money off of them. So, that's the long and short of it. So I know that, and I know it's a little bit more complicated than that. But in my role, as long as I know that, see, I've been there. I've opened up deposit accounts. I've opened up loan accounts. I've been a teller. I mean, in college, that was one of the things I did. It was some program we had with the university. So I worked with the local bank during the summers, as part of an intern program. And so I've been a teller, and I learned a lot from those the super crazy smart individuals that were in those roles that did it well. And so I respect what they do, and I know that if in my role, part of what I need to do is make sure that I know and understand what their needs are today for me to be successful and for our bank to be successful. I mean, that's one thing I told a gentleman the other day. We were interviewing, and I told him if he walked out of the interview with anything, I wanted him to walk out with, know who pays your salary. And he looked at me really weird. He had this look like, okay, I really don't know what you're talking about. And I said, okay, in a bank, the person that pays your salary is the person sitting across the desk from you. She's a lender. And I said, if she's not making loans, you and I don't get paid. And he was like, huh? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm a cost to the bank. And, I can't save the bank to profitability. I can help save money so that it doesn't cost us as much to make a dollar, but I can't save us to a profitable position. The lender has to make loans for us to make money. And I said, you always need to know, whatever business you're in, who's paying your salary. And you need to know and understand what they need to do their job successfully. And see, that's really my role in the bank, is to understand what are they doing and help get rid of those roadblocks. How can I make it easier for them to make loans? Now, how can I get rid of some of the busy work that they have to do? Can I automate that? Can I make it only take 2 steps instead of 10? Those are the ways that I help them be able to bring more revenue to the bank, and then I can get paid.
Absolutely. I love that. And I've been saying that one of these days I'm gonna do a podcast on helping the bankers really understand what their role is in the bank so that they can understand, who pays their check or who, provides their payroll, and really what each function in the bank is. I just think that would be such a great training session, if you will.
Oh,
But,
yes.
so speaking of, providing the knowledge of what you do in your role, which is such a critical role in the financial space today, and you get to play with so many toys. I'll just call it that.
Yes, we do. They are toys.
They are, and I love technology. But what is one of your favorite productivity hacks?
Okay, one of my favorite productivity hacks has to do with email. Okay, well, I've got a couple of them, but I'll just try to keep it to two. Okay, email. I know you probably fall victim to this. I know I do too, because hundreds of emails come in every day, and all of us, I mean, it's no different than like Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. It's like ding, 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 ding. Something's dinging all day long, and it's grabbing your attention and it's sucking you in. And before you know it, it is noon, and I haven't done a damn thing today. Okay, and it's like, but I've answered a bunch of emails, and you know what? That wasn't on my calendar. So I started doing this it's been a while now. I remember somebody talking about the same thing about email just kind of monopolizing their time at work. So what was it? Yeah, so I set aside time in the morning, first thing in the morning, to answer emails, and the time at the end of the day. And I tried to put that on my calendar so that that's when I do my email. So the middle of the day, and I tell people, if you need me during the middle of the day, you can use chat or you can call me on the phone. I'll respond to that, but emails, I'm only going to do those twice a day. So if it's really, really important, don't send it via email. And that's one of the things I've learned to kind of get back some of my time. And the other hack is I'm going to a gentleman I worked for. He was president of a bank, and he was also our chief revenue officer. And he was dyed in the wool sales focused person. And one of the things he used to always say to me is, Rob, you got to plan your work and work your plan. Plan your work and work your plan. And so really what that means is you need to sit down and think through, what is it that I need to do? And you think about any project you've ever been on, Tanya. I know on our side too, you think about projects, all the time is spent building out the plan. What are we going to do? How are we going to make this work? And everything like this. When you're doing a conversion, when you've acquired another bank and you're doing a conversion, you spend 6 months or more trying to figure out how we're going to make all this work. And then one weekend, everything gets converted over and you're done. But you couldn't do that one weekend work if you hadn't spent without 6 to 9 months planning out how are we going to do this. And I look at my day and everyone else's day the same way. One of the things I like to do, I say, I look at my email too, but one of the first things I like to do every day is, and I usually either do it first thing in the morning or the end of the day, is let me look at my calendar. What is it that I need to do? Okay. And then I look at other stuff that needs to be done, like my to-do list. What did I not get done yesterday? I said I was going to get done, and I calendar that. So I put it in my calendar so I've got dedicated time to get it done. And so that's kind of like, working my plan and planning my work and working my plan. Or sometimes I'll do it at the end of the day. So it may be something crazy but I try to set aside time either at the beginning or end of the day. It depends upon, what works best for a person, and planning out the next day or the next week and how do I do that. But every day I try to spend a little time doing that, and then laying stuff out on the calendar so that A, I know what I've got on the calendar, and B, can I get everything done on my to-do list today? If not, put it somewhere else. So those are my two hacks, my productivity hacks, are just spending a little time planning, and don't let email run your life.
You're my kind of guy, Rob. I love both of them. They're both great. And I have both of those myself. And man, I couldn't make it without putting those time blocks on my calendar. And I will tell you, I'll just add one thing to that, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
One thing that I have to keep coming back to myself, being in the consulting and with what I do, coaching and all, is I have to ask myself, because it's so easy to get distracted with what I am putting on the calendar. Yours would be just a little bit different, but I have to ask myself, is what I'm working on revenue producing? You know, is that planning, is what I'm working on every day, the majority of my day, revenue producing? Or am I just wasting time, you know, doing other things? And at some point, I would love to have a conversation with you just about tools you use, because I have a tool that I use for, you know, mapping out and mind mapping and detailing that I absolutely love. And but if without that, it makes things more difficult. But
it does.
Oh my goodness. So thank you for sharing that. And hopefully the audience that's listening will get some good tips from that as well. So what are some of the changes that you have seen in your banking career that come to mind, that are very impactful to you, that are probably for the good of today?
Oh gosh. So I just think technology overall, I think, has been, you know, I mean, I'm just giving you a big bucket here. Okay. This is a big bucket. Technology has been a great thing, but I think it has been a great thing. And I look at it in a couple of different ways, not only from a big bank perspective, but also from a community bank perspective. And so, you know, typically your big banks are the ones that are going to pick up on the technology and trends and things first. And then the more of the community banks, you know, once it's more in a general availability, you know, perspective, then they can pick it up. You know, that's what it was like, you know, I would say early in banking, because community banks couldn't afford to do some of the stuff that, you know, the big banks were doing, like the big four, big five. You know, they started out with, you know, bill pay, and they started out with remote deposit and, you know, things like that the smaller banks really couldn't do. The nice thing was a lot of the core providers picked up on some of that, and they started pulling all that together. So then all the community banks could do that. The cool thing about it was, you know, as a community bank, when I got into the community banking space, that was pretty much the status quo. You know, so, you know, you would have a Bank of America talking about, like I said, you know, remote deposit, take a picture of your check and deposit it to your account. You know, they're advertising the fool out of this.
Right.
And, you know, and it's like, oh my gosh, well, guess what? As a small community bank in Savannah, Georgia, we could do the same thing. It was available. And, you know, I was able to do the business case to prove that, hey, we can do this. It's not going to cost us that much more, and it'll help us keep customers from bleeding over to the big boys. And the nice thing about it was you can take advantage of that as a community bank. Let Bank of America do all the advertising on it, and then when your customer walks in the door and says, hey, you know, Bank of America's advertising this, can we do this here? Oh yeah, you can. Let me sign you up. And so it was a really cool thing when customers could see, oh, this $600 million bank can do the same thing that this gargantuan, you know, bank can do too. So it's nice to be able to see some of those tools. I'll tell you that I think, you know, with the growth of social media, mobile phones, things like that, you know, even outside of banking, I think a lot of that is driving banks to where we need to be and where we have to be. I can tell you that, you know, I think you were asking, you know, what are a lot of the positives, or what are some of the you know, the biggest advantages or changes I've seen over time. I'll tell you one of the things that I think that we as banks really need to be thinking about and keeping an eye on are what I call the neobanks. They really aren't financial institutions, but they serve as such, if that makes sense. So, they can offer you a debit card and an online account, and there's no brick and mortar. Okay, and so there are those out there, and we compete against those too. And the thing is you think about all of the baggage that we have as banks, and I don't mean that in a negative way. That's just something we've got to think about. We've had to support commercial loans, we've had to support agricultural loans, we've had to support all kinds of different lending facilities, not only on the commercial side, but on the retail side. You think about, some banks, I think we do too, still have Christmas Club. Think about that.
Yeah.
That stuff from like the 60s and 70s. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but that's still part of the past. It's part of what we're doing today. It's not a negative. But when you think about these neobanks and maybe not brick and mortar bank, they don't have all that baggage. So they can come out with some cool, neat stuff because they're also sitting on core platforms that don't have a 30-year-old code base. Okay, so think about that. Now, there's something comforting in knowing that, okay, my bank has run on the system for the last 30 years. I know it's stable. Okay,
Right.
It's stable, it runs, I'm not worried about it, it's just going to keep running. It's a diesel engine, I've got fuel in it, it is just going to run. Okay, but and you could look at maybe the non-financial financial institutions or whatever you want to call them. They're riding around in Porsches. It's quick, it's fast. Because they can they've got a retail account, they've got a checking account that they're not charging anything on because they don't have to support any of this legacy stuff, and they've got a debit card, and they're using this to fund something else out there. They may not be, that now they can make loans and have a better net interest margin than you might have because of some of the other stuff that you're doing. So there's lots of things that these other banks can do that we need to be thinking about. How can we be nimble like this? How can we do that same thing? And I'm speaking from a community bank perspective. Sometimes we don't have the capital that one of the big four has. Like a Chase, Bank of America, Wells, a Citibank. We may not have the capital to invest and to turn around on a dime some of this development work. And sometimes they can't do the development work as quickly either. But the fact of the matter is they can afford to do some of these things that maybe community banks can't. So how do we make smart decisions? And how do we, from a strategic standpoint, plan to address this and work this? How do we, one of the things I like to talk about with the bank, and I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place
here. I love it.
I love it. So, one of the things that, and I'll go back to my bank president that I worked for in Savannah, used to say, Rob, you got to plan your work your plan. And one of the things he said to me once was, Dave he had $140 million loan portfolio, and man, he was a machine, and he was great. All of his loans were perfect. They were pristine, and he was just a machine. And we were walking by, we were talking one day, and he's like, what's Dave doing right now? And I said, he's sitting at his desk. He said, he's not making me money. And I was like, what do you mean? I said, he's sitting at his desk, Rob. He can't make me money unless he's out on the street. He's got to be out on the street to be able to go get new customers. And I was like, okay. He's like, and I was like, oh, okay. So you're asking how it's like, so you want, he's like, yeah, I want to be able to take his desk with him. I was like, okay, so how can we take the bank to the customer? He said, exactly. And so that's one of the things that I've kind of kept as one of my mantras and one of my missions. And that's what I'm doing at the bank I'm at today, is trying to figure out how can we take the bank to the customer? Because the days of a bank having this big building on the corner or in the middle of the square or somewhere else and expecting people to walk in and ask for money or to say, I've got a bunch of money, will you keep it for me? Those days are over. And that's kind of why I was talking about the neobanks and stuff like that, because there's so many little things coming here biting at our business, trying to take it away from community banks, big banks. And what are the things that we can do? And that's for you asked from a CIO perspective. What are some of the things that I can do? My goal right now is how can we take the bank to the customer? And you've got to wrap that up in this other envelope. It's got to be easy, but it's got to be secure. I mean, we are dealing with customers' information that is really, really, really sacred, to them and to us, the safety of that information. So not only do I have to have an easy solution for my bankers to use, but it's got to be secure. So if they leave a laptop somewhere, no one can open it up and look at bank records. That never happens, does it? No. But yes. And so that's really my goal, is to try to figure out how can we take the bank to the customer? Because to me, that farmer, he shouldn't have to come out of the field to drive 10, 15 miles to the bank to sign something. Why can't the banker go out there to the field to him, take a laptop to him or a tablet and have him sign something there and be done with it? Now think about what that farmer's going to say to all his farmer buddies, or her farmer buddies. What are they going to say? And they're going to say, "Oh, what was that person's name?"
Exactly. Gives me chill bumps. I love it. Yes. Yeah. So you're definitely going somewhere. So there's a couple of things that come to mind. Security is one of them. And I could talk for an hour just on security. But for time's sake, I'm going to hold that one. I would love to get you and Tyler. I'm having this brain thought right now. You, I, and Tyler on a call to talk about security, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to send you both an email. We're going to get you on because I have some thoughts around that, and not even just bank security, but just security in general, social media security. I just had a conversation this weekend about social media security. I have a list, no kidding, probably this long of Facebook invites that I've not gone through. I don't just let people in. They got to meet a certain criteria before they're getting in. And I've not been hacked on, and knock on wood, I've not been hacked on social media yet, but I have criteria that people have to meet. They don't just get in. And, and again, I'm going to save that. But the next thing that you mentioned that I think is critically important is the buy-in as we're moving into all of this technology that you're talking about. While I think we have a love-hate relationship with it. Some of us really love it. There's a little bit of concern, but then there's some people that have a whole lot of concern. And it brings me to the thought of employees. So how do you get the buy-in from employees about all of this new technology and the fear that they could have, some of them could have, that, gosh, is that going to take over my job someday? How do you handle that? Because I know you do a great job with it, but how are some of the ways that you handle that from an employee training type buy-in perspective?
Well, I've got a couple of thoughts to that, and
or just go with whatever direction you think that you need to go from a interview perspective, but I have just go.
Okay. I'm going to I've got to write something down so I don't forget it.
You go right ahead.
Okay. So, there's that's a huge question you just asked. And so one of the things I can tell you, having the cool thing about having worked a bunch of different roles in my life is I've been in some of the roles that get the new technology or get the new processes or get the new things that it's like, okay, so what monkey did this, because they've never done this job before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, because a lot of times what you're sitting there going, okay, what did they just go to a farm and ask a pig to walk on a keyboard or something? Because sometimes you get this new program that doesn't do anything. So one of the things one of the things that's important to me is to get feedback from those folks. I mean, for part of me, I can tell you, you can implement new technology and things like that, but you need to understand, what am I solving for? What's the problem we're solving for, and what are we trying to get to in the end? Now, part of it, you can have grandiose ideas of, we're going to take the bank to the customer. Yeah, that's one thing. But if you're looking at new technology for a teller or for a lender or something like that, you really need to understand, what are their pain points. And those are the things that I typically try to do. I'll sit down with lenders and I'll ask them, what causes you headaches every day? What do we need to solve for? And then, go from there, because typically it's like, well, I'm trying to do this with my loan assistant, or my loan assistant can't do that. So, okay, good. Now I've got another path to walk down. I talk to the loan assistant. I tell you, you go ask tellers stuff, they'll tell you, they'll give you all the ideas you need to be a successful CIO or programmer or developer or leader. All you have to do is ask your folks and ask them, what is it that causes you problems? Just like you go to any operations area and ask them, they already know the stupid stuff that needs to be fixed. All you have to do is ask them, what gets in your way? Well, I'll tell you what gets in my way. Write it down and do something about it. And so I'm telling you that because it's kind of hard for me, from a broad perspective, to say, oh, okay, I'm going to solve this one specific problem. But what you better make damn sure of is that if I've got a list of things that I've gotten from tellers and lenders and loan assistants and operations folks, is what we're going to help solve this? Are we solving these issues? If we aren't, we need to find a different solution, because ultimately you need to solve the problems that they have today, and you need to be able to fit most, if not all, of the feedback you've received from your bankers, from your support personnel. You need to be able to show how this solution that we're bringing to the table is going to help solve that. So that's one piece of it, is you've got to talk to the people that are there. I'll tell you, I mean, it's, people, you asked me, how did I get to where I got, and it wasn't because I'm the smartest. I mean, I like to surround myself with smart people, but the one thing I like to do is ask questions. Okay. I like to ask questions.
That's smart in itself right there.
Well, I like to ask questions and understand, okay, if there's anything that we could change to make your life easier, what would it be in your job? Oh, well, if you could just get rid of this damn thing, Rob, then I could, I could do this, 10 times faster. Okay. You walk away, you solve for that, and someone becomes a hero. I always make sure that I recognize the person that told me about this, because if it wasn't for that person, this wouldn't happen. So I always put them up on a pedestal, because it's not about me. It's about them. So I guess, if you're thinking about this, you need to make sure that you recognize the people that are helping you get to where you're going, and you need to recognize them for the value that they added, because in the long run, the bank can't get to where it needs without people like that trying to help us get there. And if you don't recognize them, guess what? Next time you go ask them a question, you're not getting an answer. So that's one thing. And then there's another thing that I kind of put into change altogether. There are times you're going to make changes whether we needed to or not. Okay. So I'll tell you, we made a strategic change at our bank where we basically moved from Outlook to Google Workspace. Okay. And so we did that. We planned around it. Everybody knew it. We trained everybody on it. We flipped the switch. And the first day we were on the new platform, everybody, we're getting all these requests. Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? And basically everybody was asking, can you just make this look and work like Outlook? Well, it's not, and it's not going to. And so we're getting flooded with it, and people are like, Rob, what are we going to do? And I was like, we're not going to do a damn thing. And they were like, well, you got people, I had people call me and said, Rob, I'm the one paying for this thing. It needs to do this. And I was like, we need to give ourselves an opportunity to get accustomed to this. And somebody told me a long time ago, this was actually, I was at a seminar and somebody was talking about things, and they were talking about change, and they talked about habits, and it takes 21 days to develop a habit. So if you think about that, 21 days to develop a habit. If you've ever done any sort of capacity planning, resource planning, you know, there's typically 21 work days in a month. Okay. So what does that mean? That means that people have to do this for at least a month before they start to develop a habit. Okay. I always stretch it out to 90 days. And so that's basically what I told everybody. It's like, okay, folks, I hear you, but we're not changing anything on the platform for 90 days. I was like, what I want you to do is write down all the stuff that you think we need to change and we need to do differently on day 91. We're gonna put up a form and ask you to submit that feedback so that we can make those changes and see if it's something that's there. And you know what? Day 91, we communicated it, nada, nothing. You want to know why? Because everybody had the opportunity to develop a new way of doing things. They found out that it was different, but they could still send and receive emails. They could still file things. It was just a little bit differently. Things just worked differently. And so a lot of times I think we rush to address and fix problems that aren't problems. They're just someone's warm, fuzzy blanket that they've always had, and now you've just snatched it away and given them a new one, and they want that old nasty smelling one because it's comfortable. So, you know, I look at it, there's sometimes we just have to say no and say we're going to give change. Yeah, there's all kinds of other change management you could do. We did all of that, but I like to say, you know, once you've done all of that work, you got to let them fumble around in the system to get accustomed to it.
I totally agree. I work with both today. I work with Google Workspace and I work with Outlook. And when I don't know how to do something, you know, I go to YouTube. If I had to change a flat today, I probably would pull up YouTube and find out how to do it. So, man, you have provided such valuable information today. And I have several more questions that I would love to ask you, but for your time's sake, I probably have gone into your calendar space for your next appointment. And so I want to thank you, Rob, for being here and to end it today. I do want to ask you one last thing. Is there any advice or anything that you want to share to end the interview today? But, you know, typically people are looking for tips or strategies or anything, and you've provided several. But for someone looking to be successful, what is a tip or strategy that you would leave someone who is in the audience listening to the podcast next Tuesday that they could gain from your insight as someone who is successful? What would you share with somebody? Whether it's, again, from your challenges, your most rewarding, but out of everything that you've done in your career, what is something that you would leave today?
Well, first thing I'll say is thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed this. And my apologies if I get a little wordy.
No,
I can do that. I have
loved every second, every word you have spoken. I've loved it.
So if there's anything that I would share with so we've all been we all come to the table with some gift. It may not be what someone else has. You know, there are, like I said, there are way smarter people in this world than me, and there are people that can probably do my job better than me and can also do a lot of other things better than I can too. But I know what I know yourself, know what you're good at, know what know what gifts you have and work within that space. So, you know, that doesn't mean go outside your lane every now and then, because we always need to do that. We always need to walk in someone else's shoes, but know that. And so once you've got that figured out, then surround yourself with people that are way smarter than you, because knowing what you're good at, that you've got to have that confidence in yourself so that you aren't fearful of those smart people, because I'm not. I know that I don't know everything, and that is one of the most freeing things in the world, is knowing that if I can surround myself with really smart people, guess what? I like to ask questions. That helps me learn more. And also, other people look at that and go, huh, how's he getting stuff done? And then when they interact with me and my team, they're like, wow, where'd you find this person? Or where'd you find that person? And man, they are just crazy, super smart. And I was like, yeah, isn't it great? And so, and when you get those people to be part of your team, I mean, part of it is they can see whether you are just full of BS, or whether you really have a plan and a way and a vision. And really, you as a leader, you need to understand. It gets back to, plan your work your plan. Have a plan. Know what your goals are. Know what that vision is. Be able to point out there in the future. Be able to say, this is where we're going, and this is how we're going to get there. And they'll follow you. They'll help lead you there at times, because you're going to need them to lead you at times, because there's going to be times you're going to go, oh, wow. And the other thing is, ask questions and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are the best thing that can ever happen to you, screwing something up. Now, don't go be losing $10 million or something like that, but don't be afraid to make a mistake, and don't be afraid to say, I made a mistake, because that's how we learn. That's how we learn. In this situation, I won't do that again. And I'm going to make note of that, so that when this happens in another 3 years, we don't do that. So make mistakes. Feel free to make mistakes, and make it okay for your team and your teammates to make mistakes. Those are learning opportunities. And last, I just thought of this one. That person that says no. Love that person that says no. I used to hate it. I had this one employee, Diane. Every time we were in a meeting, and every time we were trying to do something, you'd ask everybody, should we do this? Her first response was no. No. Can we do this? No, we can't. And I was like, oh my gosh, and it just made me mad. Then one day I thought, okay, I'm going to ask her why. And so I started doing that. And I learned so much from her. And it wasn't that she didn't think we should do this. She was, I've got to sleep on it kind of person. You've got those people that will give you an answer right away, are really confident that, yep, this is the answer. But then you have those others that need to have a night to sleep on it. They need to think about it. They need to chew on it. They need to digest it before they can produce something. And so I'd always go to Diane the next day, and I'd ask her. So she and I started talking about this. And so we had a deal whenever stuff like this came up. She didn't say no, because she frustrated everyone else too. I'd always go back to her the next day. I was like, Diane, I'm going to come talk to you in the morning. She'd say, okay. And so it would give her the opportunity to think about something overnight. So a lot of times when she was telling me, and she was also my core expert. So anytime I wanted to make a change to the core, no, we can't do that. Well, when I gave her the opportunity to think about it, she could think through ways we could make those things happen. And we were able to do some really cool stuff, because she was the person that had the keys too. So,
wow.
Yes. And so I guess, I don't know, I just told you a bunch of stuff to answer that one.
That's powerful though. That's powerful.
Well, I've had enough people in my life say no that I finally started asking them why. And what I found out was they were saying no because they weren't comfortable giving me an answer right away. They needed to think about it for the most part. So
what's so powerful about that is you went to her to find out why, rather than being bitter at her and the team being bitter at her. You gave her an opportunity to share her feelings or her reasoning behind that. That too is so powerful. Wow.
Yeah,
what a leader.
Well, we're sitting there and everybody's, there's Diane. You can see the eyes rolling when she said no. And so I finally said, I'm going to talk to her about this. And so,
what a leader.
Yeah, so I did, and she was adamant. And I was like, let's talk tomorrow about this, because I could tell she didn't want to talk about it. I said, let's talk about it again tomorrow. And so we did. And after that, it's kind of like, the light bulb moment. Like I said, you gotta, though that's where you're always constantly learning. And it was kind of like, okay. And I have valued those people. So that's why I tell people, value those people that say no. Because you want to understand why. Because if you surround yourself with people that are going to always say yes, you can drive yourself into a ditch pretty quickly. And so,
Absolutely.
So make sure you have some people that are going to say no. You may not know it, but they're going to be people that say no. Make it okay for them to say no. And when they do, give them the opportunity to think about it, because they're probably the kind of person that needs to sleep on it overnight before they can give you a good thought out answer.
Wow. Such power you've spoken today. I have been inspired, Rob. I have. This has been a fantastic interview. I'm telling you, I'm going to listen to it again myself, even when it goes live. I am.
I don't know. This is like 40. This is like, wow, this is like over an hour. I'm sorry. No,
do not be sorry. Do not be sorry. This is powerful. This is powerful. We're going to publish the whole thing. And so for those of you that are in the audience, if you found value as well, like I have, please leave us a comment, share in the comments what has resonated with you. And if you haven't already subscribed to our podcast, do that right now. And be sure that you forward it to a friend, a coworker, a loved one. I would be delighted if you shared this even on social media. And here at Gossage Performance Consulting, we believe that performance drives results. And Rob shared with you today all kinds of ways of how to get performance. And until our next episode, let's go out there and get those results. Thank you so much for being here. And Rob, again, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to download and subscribe wherever you get your shows. Find more content on our YouTube channel. Link is in the show notes. This podcast is sponsored by GossagePerformanceConsulting.com.